Welcome to Black Man Lab. We are live January 25th here in the ATL, but we have some brothers from outside the ATL that'll be on tonight with us. So real excited to have this conversation around educational careers in education. So looking forward to get everything jumping off here. I see my brother Miguel Davis has jumped on. Miguel, you there?
What's up, fam? What's up? What's up? How we doing, Black Man Live? Good to see everybody. This is outstanding, and excited, and looking forward to moving forward. And there's Al with that hat on, man. What is going on? How y'all let Al up in here with the hat on, man? And then Jarrod.
You got Jarrod fired up. Jarrod had to go do a wardrobe change, man.
Bro. Ready to go get my damn cane on y'all.
I thought that was broken.
All right, bro.
I thought it was
good
broken.
To see everybody. Good to see everybody. And I'm looking forward to the conversation. I'm going to turn it back to Marty, man, so we can press forward and keep moving.
Absolutely, bro. Good to see you, man. Because I know you've been grinding out there lately. So glad to see you here, man. Just a little background. Black Man Lab, everybody, started about a little over 4 years ago. Brother Miguel Davis and three other brothers got together to have conversations with their sons. Sometimes we know our sons are prone to not necessarily listen to their dads, but they might listen to an uncle, a godfather, a close friend. And so that concept kind of is what was the impetus for Black Man Lab to start. When we were meeting live, we'd have over 250 Black men in the room together to talk about subjects across the spectrum, everything from self-development to professional conversations. And that just grew and grew. Unfortunately, with COVID, it's taken us to a space now where we are virtual, and we do this. We still are keeping at it. We've been doing this every Monday, almost for over 2 years now, Maui. And, we didn't want it to stop. So we're doing it virtually now. The plus is we get to be in a bunch of different homes, and then likewise, we get to have guests from around the country as well. So with that, there's a couple of little housekeeping things that we do every week when we have Black Man Lab. One of those is making sure that we are centered and in a space that is open to taking in information. And so what we do is we just ask everybody, if you're listening in, to kind of relax a little bit and take in a deep breath and release. And one more and release. And we just let go. We just try to let go of all that has hindered us, all that is in our mind. That kind of is just that trash in our head that gets in the way of open thought coming in. So that's what that exercise is about. The other thing that we do is we make sure that we are calling on our ancestors to be in this space, because we know that we would not be in this space without them. We know that all those that came before us are standing with us, and they are with us in terms of us being able to move forward. So with that, I want to bring on my brother, Jarrod Grant, one of our board members, and have Jarrod call on the ancestors for us. Jarrod?
All right, Brother Marty, thank you, brother, and the brothers of the Black Man Lab, and to our guests. We always like to represent our ancestors and think about them and put them, unlock them into our hearts and minds. I want us to remember and as well as lock them into our minds tonight, because we're talking about educators. Let's remember the ancient Kemetic mystery systems, that educational system, that great civilization, and remember them and lock them into your mind. Remember the education that we received from some of the great individuals like W.E.B. Du Bois. Lock them into your heart and mind. Carter G. Woodson. Lock them into your mind. Let's remember many of the educators that came before us and helped us to do some of the great work that we're doing. So take about 3 seconds to just lock some of these figures into your own hearts and mind. And then raise your hand up, and on 3, say Ashe. 1, 2, 3.
Ashe.
And then many of us, like myself, I'm a second-generation educator. And so we thank those who came before us, but I want you to thank those who came before you in your own bloodline. So think of those who created you, that allowed you to become a great educator. Lock them into your hearts and mind. And then raise your fist, and on 3, everybody say Ashe 3 times. Ashe, Ashe,
Ashe,
Ashe.
Ashe. Oh, thank you, Brother Jarrod, man. Appreciate that. And definitely, I think tonight is one of those nights where we will have the ancestors in the space, because without their education, without their sacrifices in the world of education, I dare say that none of us will be here. With that, I want to introduce our panel tonight. Right now, we have 2 of our folks on here, in Brother Jarrod, who's going to be a panelist tonight because he is an educator, and then also my brother from Chicago, my man, Kisalan Glover. So I'll start with you, Kiss. If you could give a quick introduction of yourself and, kind of what gets you here as it relates to education. And then we'll move to Brother Jarrod. Kiss?
Yeah, so thank you so much. Once again, thank you guys for welcoming to this platform. I always have a fantastic time learning and listening to other panelists and just, growing through the conversation. My name is Kisalan Glover, and I am currently the Director of Enrollment for Harry S. Truman College, one of the 7 city colleges in Chicago. Really enjoy what I do. I feel like it was a situation where I fought it for a really, really long time. But as we go through this evening and just explaining how I came about being in this process, I'll share more. But once again, thank you, brothers, for having me. I look forward to the conversation.
Thanks, bro. Appreciate you. And my brother, Jarrod Grant.
All right, Marty, I come from, as I said, second-generation educator. I taught K-12, I taught history, I taught technology, also was an administrator, all of that, of course, in Georgia. And so, as well as right now, of course, I'm on the university level. And so I think I have a nice array of experiences and different type of job titles that lets you know there's so much room and space in the world of education for our people. So looking forward for the discussion.
Awesome. Thanks, Brother Jarrod. My man, my right-hand man on this platform, one of our other panelists who I didn't know if he was going to make it on tonight, but he wanted to because this is such an important subject. He's going to be on as a panelist tonight. So my brother, Joe Barker. Joe.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you. It was a photo finish, Marty, brother. I wasn't sure if I was gonna be able to join, but thank you. Thank you for always allowing me to be part of the panel, what we're doing. And yeah, you know me, education, that's I changed my whole life to be a better servant in the educational field because of what I've seen it do to our community, or lack thereof to our community. And I just have for the past dozen plus years or so, since I've tried to move in that space, I've seen such strong brothers like Brother Glover and Brother Grant and Brother Bass, and so many brothers that literally are, I've learned from. And so I've done some work at the high school level. I've taught, 9th grade. I've mentored there, and I'm an administrator at the high school level as well now with organization that mentors and helps kids educationally in the Washington High School cluster specifically, but still do a lot of work around the Atlanta area. So I'm really, really, really passionate about promoting education for our young brothers and our young sisters, Black and brown people, and glad to be able to offer whatever I might be able to here on this panel.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Joe.
Man, I just want to jump in with the first question and get you brothers going. One, when we look at African American men in education, and we talk about, and if you look up the statistics, the numbers are, I think dismal is probably an understatement as it relates to the number of Black men that are in the education spaces at certain levels. But I know that Mr. Green from Beasley Academic Center and Mr. Monaghan, Marty's dad, they were in those buildings influencing and impacting young men and women. And for some, they were father figures, and they were beyond just educating in its I want to say in its European sense, in this kind of very narrow A's and B's and 1, 2, 3, 4. It's really life education. How do you all today see Black men entering into the education space, and why do you see this as an important profession for our young brothers to seriously consider? Because obviously, if everybody wanted to dunk a basketball and rap and maybe practice law, do different things, but this education space is one that we'd like to hear why you just see the need for more Black men to enter and where we are right now in that, in the profession.
If I could dive in here, there's a saying that says if we treated our male Black educators the way we treated our male athletes and entertainers, what would it be, right? It's not a glory job, right? It's almost a selfless, thankless position. But I think to your point, when we say education to young Black men, they think teaching. First thing they think is going in the classroom and teaching. And I challenge them sometimes, right? Because education is all things. No matter what you're involved in, there's going to be a point where you have to understand basic math, reading, so forth and so on. And so on this journey, right, when I think of myself, I had an adversarial relationship with education when I was growing up. I'm just going to be honest. I had a short attention span. I was a kinesthetic learner. And you could have never told me in a million years that I would be doing what I'm doing now. So when I think about going into the field of education, you talked earlier, I think I looked at a statistic that said only 6% across the country, only 6% are male minority teachers, right? Across all grade spans. I could think about my academic career, and I had 2 straight up purebred African-American male instructors, teachers. And that's through about almost 8, 9 years of educational history. And so I think it's important that we continue, right, to share, think outside the box, engage these students in a way, because we're dealing now with a different group of kids. Back then, students can come to school and get reprimanded because maybe you may see Mr. Johnson at the grocery store later. Students can come to school and get reprimanded and feel okay about it. Nowadays, you can't even tell a joke on one of these little young men. They going nuts, right? You can't, what they call, cap on them. And so I think it's extremely important that from an educational standpoint, you meet these students where they are. And before you start trying to get them to learn and things like that, some of the basic, more mannerisms have to be imparted in order for us to even start to think about bringing them into class and really growing them on an educational level.
Yeah, Mauli, that's a good question, brother. As you know, I'm from Racine, Wisconsin. You don't really realize, that what you bring with you when you start to actually teach. Sometimes, of course you had the education, but what else do you bring with you? I brought with me community. I didn't realize, in hindsight being 2020, that I grew up in a really great community of Black folk. And the community center, I've lived right off of Lake Michigan, parks, all of the rec, everything. But I took that into the classroom as well. What I see, and I like your percentage there, brother. You talk about the 6% minority men, but half of them are milquetoast brothers. So you also got to have strong Black men who looking forward to working with this group of young people, because it is those people who are going to have the best and most impact. Right. And so bringing community into the classroom, bringing strength into the classroom, I had students, they would do whatever, they would show up and show out in that classroom in the most positive way. And so whatever they needed to do to play basketball, football, I had an organization called Maharaji, which dealt with the youth development. I brought in grants from outside. I was partnering with Ford Motor Company, always giving money towards whatever we were doing. We made sure our basketball team had new gear every season, custom to those boys. And so for the most part, so teaching for me was teaching them the whole child, as well as modeling the behavior. So they saw a brother coming in every day, bow tie, yep, skinny teacher, and just with a lot of energy. They saw me play basketball with them. They saw me go to the vegan restaurants, because I lived in the community in which I taught as well. I moved when I got my middle school job, teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th grade technology, and then moving and shifting to history, 8th grade history. I moved into the community in which I taught. That way they saw my behavior outside of the classroom was literally the same that it was inside the classroom. So they didn't see a two-faced type of brother, nor did they see a milquetoast type of brother. They saw the same brother and consistency. And I had an impact, not just on students, and this is a lot of Black men because my school was like that, but also the parents. And therefore we were able to deal with the entire child as opposed to just one aspect of the child, which was their education. And so therefore, when I came with the discipline, it didn't matter. They wanted to be disciplined, and they wanted to be helped along in making them iron sharpen iron. They wanted to be stronger students. They wanted to be stronger community folks. So I think we bring with us how we also grew up, and we also bring this sense of community inside the classroom, along with the discipline, along with everything education as well. So.
Yeah, I agree with Brother Grant. Like, both brothers are extremely intellectual with their responses. What Brother Grant said hit home for me, though, because when I went in the classroom, I brought my community with me. And Molly, you know firsthand my community. You know where I come from. You know what I grew up with, and those that I've surrounded myself with. And so when I go into the classroom with brothers like that in my head and in my mentality, and I'm teaching and I'm giving life lessons analogous to what's going on in our world, they're able to relate to me because I'm bringing something to them that is in their community that they see all the time. I was not, like Brother Grant said, I was not different outside the classroom than inside. And with in the school system where 85% of the teachers are white females, that was pretty challenging, for me to be who I am around a white principal, around white mostly instructors and department chairs. But it's something that I had to do because they don't know what they don't see. So when I go in that classroom and can be myself, now they can see, okay, I can be a strong Black man and still teach. Okay, I can be pro-community and teach others. They don't know what they don't see. So when they're surrounded by, 85% white female instructors, vast majority of them grew up with that. They're looking for other careers because they don't know that that's something that they can do. But when they see the examples like Brother Glover and Brother Grant, And when they see us outside the classroom, I want to say that for a second. That's important, because I was probably at one of your organized protests, Molly, and one of my students showed up and just ran up to me. I was like, "Mr. Barker, yo."
Yeah.
And I was like, "This is what we do inside the classroom, outside. This is what we do." And it wasn't long after that we started, just like Brother Grant said, we started a mentoring group at the school, Iron Sharpens Iron. We started the Black Student Union at the school. All of these things that never existed before, and were spawned by what they saw by me outside of the classroom in the community, and they knew they needed that. They knew they wanted to be a part of something bigger than themselves and things that they hadn't seen. So exposing them to brothers like what we do here, and giving them life lessons in the classroom, you don't have to beg for them to be your mentee. They want to follow you. They want to follow those brothers that are in front of them, teaching them something that nobody else is exposing them to or showing them. They want that. All you got to do is just show up for them.
That's right. That's right.
I know, Marty, you're going to jump in. I wanted to just say this in observation. Just watching Jana, you all know my wife she comes from, my mother was an educator. I would go to Wendell Phillips High School with her. Nothing like walking the halls with her, going to the basketball games. The Philip Dunbar basketball game was like the rivalry back then. And to be in that gym, that little bitty gym, and just for the respect that she got, and then walking through the community of Decatur with Jana, and having worked with a lot of these same young people when we did our Black History Month play that we produced with the young people, that relationship in community is something that is deeply profound. To show up to a football game and the kids are on the sidelines, they point up in the stands at their teacher like, "Hey, there's Miss Johnson Davis," and that, So I just want to underscore what I've observed in terms of the impact of being in community as an educator, and just applaud you brothers for being those kind of men and teachers, and understanding that the largest part of our education, and I think we'd all agree, didn't happen in a classroom. It didn't. We got really educated outside of the classroom, and it's the people who were part of that education process who determined our trajectory or not. If we learn from certain folk, we learn some craziness. We learn from other folks, we learned a way forward. So I just wanted to tap in with that and appreciate you brothers for moving in that way. But I'll turn it back to you, Marty.
No, yeah, you hit right on where I was gonna go, man. I think it's interesting. Mauli, myself, our brothers, Gary Mills and Larry Stewart, we all grew up together. The commonality that we had amongst all of us growing up in Jeffrey Manor, which wasn't a bunch of guys like us at the time, coming from families that were educators. Both of my parents were educators. Mauli's mom, my boy Kerry, both his parents were, and boy Stu, his mom was. So we had that commonality, which bred us into a level of community, I think, that was a little bit different in making us want to do something different than what we saw around us all the time. And that leads to my next question. And it's probably a deep question, but it is this. When we talk about the next generation of educators, and we talk about having our young Black men trying to move into that space, what do you think is the why for them? What would it be to get them to want to be in that space? It was easy for us because we grew up in it. But what do you think would be the secret sauce, if you will, to make that happen now? Because we have to have it. It's essential from a leadership standpoint, and likewise, it's essential for our children to know their history, not the Euro history as Mauli talked about before. What do you think it would be the key there? And Jarrod, I'll start with you.
I think for a lot of Black men, it's almost like going into the army, or, you know, if you live in Israel, all men and women for 2 or 3 years of their life have to be in the military. So it's almost, to a certain extent, we need everybody contributing to education at some point in their life to go back and get into that classroom and actually work with those students. We need to be ambassadors to making sure these young people want to go into the classroom, but not just the classroom is the foundation, but it's the springboard to every other facet of education. There's so many opportunities in education. I went from the classroom, and then I went into professional development. I went into instructional technology. I became an administrator in instructional technology. I went into research planning and accountability. And if we're talking about money, you know, you start off, if you're in a large city like Atlanta or Fulton County, you're starting off at $40,000, $42,000. You can easily end in six figures, you know, and so depending on, you know, how far up you go up the ladder. So there's a lot of opportunity in education. Of course, your salary increases every year, and people don't really even think about it. As a teacher, if you're making $50,000 or $60,000 a year for 8 months of work. The same thing with other positions, 220 days, and you get a month off. And really, you're looking at it, you get 2 months off for the year, and you're making $80,000 or $90,000 a year. And so you still get to do other projects, especially projects towards inspiring and being ambassadors towards bringing others up. So we got to keep a wisdom system, a retention system of going back and making sure that we have others that we see who have talent to also go in that classroom. Everybody needs to do a tour of duty. And that tour of duty is get into that classroom and really touch and feel these students.
That's interesting and powerful, man. It would be, you know, in hindsight, you know, coming out of school, not knowing, you know, what I was going to do, but I always had in the back of my mind, I'll probably teach at some point because that's what my parents did, and never did that. I never got to that, and I think that it's you know, kind of permeated throughout my life and everything I do, whether it's training, you know, coaching, basketball, whatever. There's still that element of teaching there, and I think that, to your point, Jarrod, it would be great for our young folks to be able to transition from that, at least to have that moment in that space, because it's going to stay with them regardless. It's still going to be impactful on whatever else they do.
If I can say this one last thing, Marty, it's the reason why we started Black Man Lab, a part of it. And that is, I was inspired by two Black men. Mm-hmm. And that's when I started doing well in school. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I was doing as well as I needed to do in order to make sure to play basketball. Long as I was basketball ready, yeah, you know, with my grades, I can make whatever grades I need to make. If I had to make an A, I'll make an A. But if I didn't have to, it was cool too.
Sure.
So it was two Black men. And that's why I say Black men inspire Black men. And therefore, they need to see different Black men, because it's going to be one of you all that going to inspire the attention, the focus, and discipline of those young men. And the girls, but you know, our organization focus on young men, but and it's that which impacts them. So because they had me as a teacher, I'm bringing in my Uli. I'm bringing in you. I'm bringing in every brother on this panel, and so that they can see different Black men in different roles that inspire their future. And so that's how we get y'all up in there as well.
Absolutely. Brother Kiss, what about you, man?
You know what? Brother Grant hit on a couple of important points, right? Influence, right? To get them back in the class, it's the influence. I remember back when I was probably early 70s, there was a brother named Nelson Wilson. To me, it was two first names, but he was always really put together. He happened to be a Kappa, I found out years later. But it was his.
Don't get him fired up, man.
His cane broken too, Fred. His cane.
Number tonight, and I'm Patrick Simmons, who is a wonderful Kappa educator. My fault, Patrick.
There you go.
It was his influence. It was how he moved in and throughout the community. Now, this wasn't a classroom setting, but it was that indirect learning space. It was the gym. It was where we went to paint. There were things where I watched him get in and out of his sob, right? Where there was this influence where you wanted to learn more. You began to mirror some of his behaviors. The other thing I think, we need to continue to encourage some of these young men who have these incredible leadership skills to hone those skills, right? To move in a positive space, to continue to create programs that are creative, right? Especially from a junior college level, we get the opportunity to create programming. And I think the more creative you are, that keep them engaged through a certificate or through graduation, through a diploma, meeting them where they are, right? Right now we're in a space where cannabis is really big, right? There's a college here, Oakton College, who early on adopted learning how to grow, learning the process. Their enrollment increased in Black male alone by 16% over one semester because they were then challenged to do some of the things that they were really interested in. And so when I think about it, I think about two direct ways to connect, right? I'll go back, right? What if we really begin to look at our educators the way that we look at LeBron and the way that we look at,
exactly,
right? If we really, right? And so we have to show ourselves in a different light. Brother Grant talked about going and playing ball and really making itself digestible outside of that classroom space. That influence and that leadership, in addition to staying creative around programs like this and really allowing their voices to be heard, I think we begin to develop educators that don't even know that they want to be educators. But they know they're around some quality brothers who are not trying to take something from them, who are not using them, who are trying to grow them in ways that they don't really see themselves growing. Really quickly, never in a million years did I think that I'd be an administrator at a college. It took for me one day to be in training table at Kentucky State University where I would get a book and literally put a Sports Illustrated on the inside. Hell, I'm second leading scorer. What I need to learn this for? And it took for me to see one of my teammates. He asked me, he said, why are you reading Sports Illustrated? We're supposed to be studying. This is the time to study. And it was in that moment that I realized, man, Black guy, I just didn't grow up that way, right? Brothers are studying. Brothers are getting it. I didn't come from that situation. So when I listen and I say, you come from a family of educators and you come from a long family and you're a second generation educator, it was different. And there are a lot of young men out here who just come from different situations. They have no idea. And it takes for us to stay strong and creative and don't get tired of our voice. And I think that's what will start driving this next generation into this field.
I like the way brother said that we got to raise these educators without them knowing that they're becoming educators. Like, I think that's the key. I'm just sitting here listening to the examples that he said, and I was an engineer my whole life, director of operations, injection motor, just making, bags of money. And out of nowhere, I was like, you know what, I'm changing my career. Went into education, realized I'm a second generation educator. My mom handled her business. My dad worked for NASA. He taught other engineers. Like, I just realized how much of it was in me, but was never told me, hey, this is what you need to do. But instead, I was constantly around them. And it's funny as I look at the brothers of Let Us Make Man and how many of them are educators, and the brothers that I've always been around when I pledged, the amount of those brothers that are teaching at universities right now. So I gotta agree with what you're saying, bro. It's like you have to raise them to be educators without them necessarily knowing that, but you have to be consistent and keep them in that environment. I will say this. I will say we have to do a better job of not necessarily trying to assimilate into what society tells them they're supposed to be doing. And every black boy ain't gonna be a basketball player. And I know I'm on the phone with a bunch of athletes. I know. But they have way more in them than just that. And if we do, like Brother Glover said, and we start treating educators as we treat these star athletes, you know, what would that look like for them? I think we've done a much better job of that as I've gotten older in this generation. It's definitely more so than how I saw my mom be treated. But we do have to show them what those options are, be consistent in their lives, and do exactly what Brother Glover said, raise them to be educators without them even knowing that that's what we're doing.
Good stuff, man. I you know, as I'm listening to this, I think that the underlying theme here is that our young brothers, our young folks out there, not just brothers, but young folks, period, in our communities, they have some innate leadership qualities that they have that just need to be honed. And I think that that's one of the things with us as Black folk that is often overlooked. You know, we look at the bad so often with our young folks without really looking a little deeper to see their level of innovation, their level of creativity, their level of leadership amongst themselves. And we look at it a lot of times in a negative way without saying, oh, if I just move that energy over here, imagine what they can do. And we see it time and again. We see it, you know, quite often when folks are given the right environment, how they blossom and bloom. Molly, I know you had something that you wanted to jump in with. Go ahead.
Yeah, I see one of our other board members, Miguel Dominguez, in, man, and I'd love for him to join in the conversation and raise a question or two. He's tracked. I see him with his sons and the importance of education and the role that he plays in making sure that they get, you know, the best possible education. I turn to you brothers and ask, I know we can lift up and elevate African-American teachers as a whole, but African-American male educators in particular. What else can we do as a community to support that trajectory, that direction, that professional direction? What do you see the need for us to do as a community to make, you know, we need more of you all, right? In fact, I'm sitting in here and I just made the decision. I said, I'm going to teach a class either at Savannah State or Morehouse or Clark in the next year. I'm doing it, you know, and just offering myself up.
I already got it for you then. We good. You good. Let's do it.
So I'm gonna do that. And that's you know, I think a service that we owe back. You know, we owe that. At the Naval Academy, I had one African-American professor, a male professor, my whole time. And he was a great Kappa man. So here I stand. But y'all go ahead and jump in, man. You know, I had to circle back to that.
Here you stand on the call with a whole bunch of alphas. But anyway, go ahead. I digress.
We done added Miguel into the call, man. It's getting worse and worse for you, Molly.
Any more of these without me being involved, man. I see what it is. It's like a mob up in this joint. But seriously, you know, what can we do as a community, man? What do you all see our role as in terms of encouraging even more?
I think overall it's work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of dedication. It's a commitment. Personally, I'm involved with an initiative here in Chicago and Marty, you guys are familiar with it. It's called Men of Color in Education. the president at my college, Dr. Sean Jackson, realized, there you go, he realized that there's just a Black male teacher shortage. And so one of the ways of giving back is really, right, there are 3 cohorts. There's a cohort of CPS, young Black men that I've recruited, 15 of them. And then I go into the city college system and recruit 15 of those Black men who are all on a trajectory and have stated interest in being early childhood educators. I then go find 15 community members who are perhaps looking for a career change or just looking to go into the field of education. We've recruited 15 men of color educators, whether they're principal or administrator here in the city, that have some K through 12 experience, but also some administrative experience. But working with that group and kind of discovering these kids, these young men, and what they really want to do when you get them, they're rough around the edges. I think it's the commitment. It's showing up. It's calls like this. It's platforms like this where you have to consistently show up. That's one of the things that I noticed. It'll turn on you in a minute in this field. And I think I've heard it kind of throughout you have to walk the walk and talk the talk. You can't show up one day, one way, and then show up another, not having 5 minutes for a gentleman that needs to pull you to the side and explain what's going on in his household. And so I think overall consistency and just putting in the work, just putting in that work will begin to change that landscape and allow us to continue to give back.
That's great stuff, Al. That's great stuff. What about you, Joe? What do you think?
So, consistency is huge, and I'm always going to agree with that. You'll hear me say consistency all the time. I like something that Brother Glover said too. There is, we definitely need to engage our youth, and whether it's workshops, like Let Us Make Man would always have great workshops. Maybe it's one of them on Black men in education. Same thing we try to expose in some of the Black Man Lab panels. Turn those into workshops where we're educating. Another area though is there are a good amount of, seasoned African-American men out there that want to make a change, that want to go into education. And it's funny because as I heard Brother Grant earlier talk about the financial path, that was my only reluctance. When I first knew I would give up a manufacturing big job to go into education, I knew what I was going to start at. I didn't know how quickly I could get up from there. And I think a lot of people are reluctant to make that change, even though it's in their heart and it's their passion. They're reluctant to do it because it's like, how long am I going to have to work to get back to where I was? And I'm not saying you will always get back to where you were, but I really like the way that Brother Grant framed that financial path, because it's very fact-based, and it's almost like he's been looking at my salary the past 4 years, because that's pretty much exactly what it was. You start back in the 40s, mid-40s, but you make a couple of good moves, and Black male educators are wanted.
Our premium.
Don't sleep. They are wanted. I jumped up very quickly because it was like, man, we have a dude that wants to engage with these dudes. People don't know how to teach Black boys. They can't relate to them. They don't know what they're doing. So when you get up there and they see these young African-American men rocking with you, and they see you're in space outside the school with them, and you know what to do and how to do it, they're like, hey, we need to keep him around. We need to raise him up. It'll happen. And there are a lot of brothers that are interested in that move, but they're reluctant to because of financial restraints they may have, that they don't know how quickly they can break those bonds.
Yeah, I love what Joe just said. Black men are the commodity of education. Yes. We can write our ticket in any way, shape, or form. So it is a wide open field where you can rise up in so many areas of the field. So you're not held hostage to anything. And so, and you can become an in 3 or 4 years, you can be an assistant principal. You can become a director or an assistant director. It's so many options. But the other thing that y'all talked about is, you talked about consistency. the other word I want to put out there is exposure. And so we do that here with Black Man Lab and others. Like we do with Let Us Bake Man, they need us to expose them to a larger world. They need to see a Black man who's a civil rights attorney. You know, yes. They need to see a Black man who is a professor. One of the I taught in Clayton County middle school, and my students had never seen the university. And so every year I took a field trip to the AU Center, just across town. And that was a simple trip for some place where they grew up in Clayton County, not 10 miles or 15 miles away from the AU Center. And they had never even seen it, heard about it, or knew nothing about that vision of the future. And so the key factors have to expose them to a larger life and let them know all of the opportunities and things that they could choose and pick from. And as an educator, you know, I didn't sign until the summertime, because you know why? I knew that I could run the ticket.
Yeah, you're breaking up pretty bad there, man. We'll bring you back in a second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll bring you back in a second. Kisalan, did you? I saw you nodding your head. Did you have something that you want to jump in on that?
I think that's overall. He couldn't have said it better. Consistency is important, but exposure. Here in Chicago, realizing that 13 and 14-year-old young men from the South Side hadn't seen the Ferris wheel on Navy Pier, it wows you, right? You're like, no way. The other part of that, for as much as the adversarial relationship I had, I could walk to the beach. I could walk to Michigan Avenue. So exposure, based on where I grew up. So exposure Brother Grant played a major role. And so I would wholeheartedly agree that we need to continue to be creative and expose them to what they think are the impossibles.
Absolutely. Brother Miguel, are you there?
Yeah, I'm right here, brother.
Hey, what's happening, bro? Good to see you. How you doing?
Good to see you. I'm good.
Always. That's you have a question for our panel?
Man, look, a lot of what's been said has already been, all the way on point. I would just add, I look forward to the day in education where the teachers are getting younger people in education, and also more Black and brown men. I think back to my own education. So many things happened during that time as a young man for me growing up in the South Bronx, where I was being told more about what I couldn't be or being shown what I couldn't be, rather than being taught to really live with purpose and live out my wildest dreams. And I think that these younger educators, that's what they're all about. It's not just particularly in the lower grades, teaching whatever the lesson of the day is, math, English, and science, but really just, I see my children in school today really, really being excited about some of their teachers and the things that they're being taught. But, thankfully, my younger children have been able to go to a charter school where some of the teachers most of the teachers they have are really young and just good looking, energetic teachers that I never had, that really, really vibe and really have just good energy with the kids, man. And I hope that through conversations like this, and as that continues, that more young people get it inspired to be their own kind of teacher. And I think that's critical.
I like Miguel's formula. He talks about youth, But and two other things I just want to add to that formula real quick. The being intelligent and one other piece is being cool.
Right.
Having a cool disposition, you bring value to being intelligent so that they can model that behavior and be okay that it's all right to be an intelligent young person and pursue intelligence in the most cool way. So I just wasn't a teacher who was intelligent and square, which is an old term, of course, but I was cool, and that cool factor went a long way to being an educator.
And Brother Jarrod hit it on the head. That's exactly what I was getting at, and I neglected to use that language. That cool factor, that swag is so necessary these days, just to have these folks to really hear you, and it just goes such a long way towards credibility. Because you're right, we do have many young people who are intelligent, who will dumb themselves down just to be accepted by other kids who are not as blessed. So that cool factor is critical.
Yeah, and you touched on something big there, Miguel, in terms of dumbing themselves down. I think that it's very important for our young folks to have the realization that you are good just as you are, right? Who you are is all you need to be. You do not need to get nasal, if you know what I mean. You do not need to change your inflection. What you have up here is all that is needed, and that in itself will get the job done, and likewise it'll pull people into your leadership as well. So I completely agree with what both you guys are saying there. I had a question
look cuter than normal.
from
I was wondering why.
I think from YouTube. We had a question which was this is from Mark Curtis. He says, how can he apply his degree in urban studies here in Atlanta in the world of education? Anybody can jump into that. I think that might fall right to you, Jarrod.
Did he say urban studies?
Yeah,
I mean, he can easily go into high school. Although high schools have a low turnover, elementary has the highest turnover of teachers and things because they kind of move on. High school teachers tend to get older and stay in the high school, but because of the wave of charter schools, you can easily get into a charter high school, which offers a variety of different fields of study for students. So, I don't know specifically based upon that exact thing, but I'm sure they would offer some transferable skills or teaching areas because of that background. So, absolutely.
Yes, I want to co-sign what Jarrod said. That's kind of the path I took. I was an engineer, and exactly what Jarrod just said. Again, he's looking at my whole resume apparently, but I was told, if you want to get into education, what are your transferable skills? So I was like, I'm an engineer. I can teach X, Y, Z, but it's not transferable. Like, okay, I'm an engineer, I'm going to go teach engineering. That's not a subject. That's a course of study. So specifically, I had to, I took my exam here in Georgia. Like Jarrod said, it's much easier to get into a private school or charter school. And there are in Atlanta, there are a lot of charter schools and private schools that serve underserved communities. So I'm not talking about going into the bourgeoisie schools. There's a lot that serve underserved communities in the charter and private area that are funded in very unique ways. And I was able to get in there with the transferable skill. Then basically I just kind of marketed myself, and because we are such a commodity, once you go there, I guarantee you, if he wants to go in with urban studies, he'll find a spot where they need him. And I guarantee you, he won't last there for long, because what he will find is he's far more valuable than just that in that community. It's going to be something they're going to need him to do much more than teach, which is sufficient. I'm never saying just teach. It is sufficient. However, we as Black men are so needed in these high school and elementary and middle school environments for so many things. He will find a valuable spot. But I think it starts with understanding the transferable skill, looking into charter schools that are either growing or looking for support. And I think in the Atlanta area, there's a lot of opportunities for them.
Real quick, guys, I want to do this because I think it's important for our young folks that are out there, as well as their parents, if there's any listening that have young folks that may have an interest in a career in education. I think it's important for them to understand what an education track could look like. Like, tell real quick, if you could give real quick of just what got you here, in terms of what got you to where you are today in education, from whether it's in school or whatever, to what got you here. So Brother Kiss, if you could just give a quick run through of how you got here.
Yeah. So degree is in business marketing. Went into sales. Started in sales, did very well, get for gab, wound up being a national sales trainer. Through that, created my own situation where I was working with parents throughout CPS, throughout Chicago Public Schools, and just learning more how to communicate with their student. One of the things that I showed expertise in was taking a high-level message and then making it digestible to people who weren't necessarily thinking that high level. And so if I could fast forward, that national sales training job for some of the larger companies turned into the Kisalan experience, communication is king. And I met a principal at a grade school here in Chicago. I was working in his school and he saw the numbers, right? He saw the numbers, and more importantly, he saw the connection, not only with parents, but with students and administration. And from there, I will tell you guys, he took me on a track, took me to district office, promoted me, gave me my own parent university, where I was just working with parents, creating curriculum around growing their brand. And then when he moved over, he left CPS, he moved over to Truman College as the president. It was funny, Marty, I was in the gym, I was in Finger, and I got a call like, hey, brother, I need you over here with me. And so he brought me in with and I'm not afraid, with no kind of enrollment type of frame whatsoever. He brought me in with the understanding that I could build culture, that I was an expert at understanding curriculum and building curriculum. And that's now I'm the director of enrollment management. I work with a number of departments there throughout the college. And you all that work on the university level know what enrollment management does. We work with all facets, admissions, financial aid, but that puts me hands-on to those students. And so still have a hands-on touch with the student as well as with administrators. So that was pretty much the quick path to where I am now.
Which I was fortunate that I was able to kind of see that happen. And when you popped up in Truman, when you popped up in Truman, I was like, huh? I was like, how'd that happen? But I was, hey man, you're where you're supposed to be, brother, and I'm happy for you. And they got a good one in you, and so does the community. So great stuff, bro. Jarrod, what about you, man?
Yeah, brother, I came into grad school when I first started. Then, of course, I needed to work. And I got long-term sub because I was in political science and history. Long-term sub in history at a Fulton County High School, Westlake High School. And then I went on over to, I got a full-time position the next year at a middle school in Clayton County, North Clayton Middle School. And then I started a nonprofit 501c3 organization for developing young Black males, and start receiving funding from the county, funding from free drug government grants, you name it, state government, federal. along with community organizations and partnerships with local corporations. From there, I went over into APS and started doing some administrative stuff in political science and instructional technology. Also became an administrator. I also left from there and started doing work in my own business. So what I did for the school system for educational technology, I started my own business called Learning Technology and Leadership. And so I've done projects across the country for the Chris Paul Family Foundation, for the Jim and Cheryl Caldwell Foundation, putting in technology labs across the country, from Compton and LA to New York, to North Carolina, Detroit, Wisconsin, throughout Indiana, throughout the country, and Portland. So I took those skills to create my own business, as well as, dealing with K-12 is an expertise as far as a instructional teacher, as well as an administrator, taking it into a business, but then beginning to open up into a whole new field of education, which is in university, colleges and university. So as a professor, I work in political science, and so the field is wide open for anybody and so many opportunities for anybody going into the field of education to really open themselves up.
Great stuff, brother. And then real quick, Joe, if you could give your journey, and then we want to make sure that we have some time here to do I think it's really important tonight, our
Absolutely.
habits, rituals, and disciplines. So Joe, go.
Absolutely. Real brief. Probably follow more so the Brother Glover path. I had kids pretty early on, and so had to find a means to take care of them and raise them and provide them their needs and wants. So just was in corporate America for 21 years, looked for transferable skills, wanted to get into teaching. Somebody wanted to do more in the community, saw the need, changed over into teaching, got to teaching, and very much like Brother Glover, somebody noticed me. Somebody was like, hey, this is, you have an ability here. And my specific ability was community engagement. And so I was able to go into enrollment and recruitment at a high level of a private school. Then somebody within the network of that school noticed me, and I moved to Charleston, South Carolina for a little while, and went to open a school there and engaged in the community there to see if that's something they would be interested in. Again, it was a school for the underserved and those in need. They could not otherwise afford a good education. And then came back to Atlanta after working on that and engaging the community there, and just kind of doing similar work here, whether it's mentoring, engaging the community, helping raise funds for organizations, helping the community see value in the organizations that are supporting them, that are not always well funded, but always are wanting to promote the high education of Black and brown youth. And so, yeah, it's been a blessing that I was noticed, and my path has been much more aligned with community engagement, development, and secondary education, getting Black and brown youth into the collegiate level.
I'll say this, man. You three brothers, I know y'all very well. The world of education, the community of education is lucky to have you. I know that there are a bunch of young folks that have been touched by you guys, and I dare say would get into the field of education themselves because of you all's influence. So thank you for that. With that, a couple of things also. If anybody out there is interested in getting into education as a profession, there's an organization called Black Male Educators Talk, and they're run by the founder is Ayodele Harris. He works with another organization that we work closely with, which is Ndugu, and they're more than willing to help to try to guide folks that are looking to get into the world of education. We'll make sure that we have their information on our website as well. So with that, fellas, we are up against the clock, and we do not want to have this night end without talking about habits, rituals, and disciplines that each of you guys have, because it's important for our young folks to know that none of this stuff just happens out of the blue. And they also need to know that there are some things that we do on a regular basis that keeps us moving forward as far as us learning, as far as us being able to deal with whatever goes on in this I say crazy world that we're in right now. So if you guys can run through your habits, rituals, and disciplines, we'd appreciate it. Brother Jarrod, I'll start with you. Habits, rituals, and discipline.
All right, Marty. I like to open up with my ancestors every morning and meditation. I think we're lifelong learners, and therefore we should be reading something daily, whether it's an article. I like articles off of Facebook that I'm tied to, like the Atlantic or the Roots or something interesting. And of course, followed up with looking at one of the books I'm just reading that week. And so and then get in your exercise. I've been up and down about it over the last few years as I finished this doctorate. But I think it's very important. I like to play basketball. I think it's very important to try to stay in shape. So those are my habits.
Good stuff. Brother Kiss, how about you?
You know what? I the last time I had the pleasure of being on this platform, every morning, Aretha Franklin, rock steady. And every morning she sets, I don't care what mood I'm in, I'm rocking rock steady because it's everything that I'm about. That Sunday morning hoop, I've been doing it. I've had the pleasure now for doing that for 22 years. It makes me emotional. I've had the honor now of being able to do that for 22 years. And I'm still competing, getting up every morning, making sure I get in there. The other is every night I pray over my wife. She, I make sure if she's in there, I go in there and I just make sure I pray over her. And then from a discipline standpoint, I just make sure I read. I make sure that I get, to your point, Brother Jarrod, I get a good reading in. It helps me. It helps in my conversations. It helps when I'm writing, and it helps when I'm listening. And so I think those are some of the ones that stand out right away.
Man, you hit me twice there, brother. Rock steady. That's a song that'll get you going, right? Aretha will get you fired up. But then the Sunday hoop, that hurts. I ain't there, but that one. Joe, what about you?
Yeah, very similar to both brothers. Morning meditation and reflection, just to make sure that the universe and that which I believe in is ordering my steps, and I'm listening and following that direction. In the evenings, like Brother Glover, just prayer over my loved ones and all of us that are navigating through dealing with things in this society. So, opening with meditation, ending with prayer. Habits. As far as discipline, learning from somebody. I used to always challenge my sons. They would come up from school, what'd you learn today? What'd you learn today? And at some point I realized I need to be asking myself that every day. Every day I need to learn something from somebody, whether it's a brother, a sister, mother, father, brother, auntie, uncle. Like every day, I'm just always asking, I'm always seeking. I need to learn something from somebody, and that's something that I learned from Buddha and the path that Buddha was on, just always able to learn from everybody until you reach your own enlightenment, which is far, far away for most of us, definitely me. And then reading, reading is definitely something that, my spiritual journey that I'm on, much like Mally saying he's going to go do some teaching. I have a relatively large sphere of influence in my faith. And I've been able to take advantage of that by furthering the journey in my knowledge in my faith and increasing the sphere of those that I'm able to influence, both young and old, on what faith means to us and what we're supposed to be doing out there and how that intersects with activism. Because many try to separate the two, but it's all the same thing. Jesus was a revolutionary. So those are the things that are important to me that I make sure I'm doing and learning and reading every day.
Great stuff. So appreciate you, man. Appreciate you, panel. This has been awesome. Thank you all so much for this. Notice, I want everybody that's looking out there, notice we got some new swag, some new Black Man Lab swag. I don't know if y'all can see the sweatshirt that I'm wearing right now, but it's been a long time coming. We've been trying to get
mine.
our new stuff, man. So we got some different shirts. I'm gonna show y'all real quick what you can see on here. So we got this black and white. We got white, black on white.
And then you got black and gold.
I got a black and gold. I don't have it in my hand, but it's black and gold. We
got
was
it,
probably
brother.
happy about that. I thought I brought it.
Man,
Hey, Kiss, this is what happened. I thought I was bringing it with me, but I brought your shirt.
Okay.
This is the organization that Kiss was talking about.
That's what's up.
That she's part of, Men in Color and Education.
Yeah.
So so we'll have all of this on the website. Please look to get your Black Man Lab gear, and we would love to see folks walking around with it because it's quite swaggy, if you ask me. Anyway, I'm gonna hand it back to Mowley. Mowley, close us out, brother.
And I do want to acknowledge that Joe left out one other habit that he has, and that is getting some dope ink. So this brother every day getting a different, he's getting sleeves, and his brother's body is just, he laid out with that dope ink. I just had to throw that out there. You represent with it.
Making yourself digestible.
So we close out you all in our tradition, a tradition handed to us by ancestor Injiri Al-Ghani, Queen Mother Injiri Al-Ghani, who led us in Cobra and in so many different other organizations, who was an inspiration and a teacher to me in this movement that I have come to just give thanks for on a daily basis. And she would just have us hold hands. There's something powerful about touching and agreeing, and have us hold hands and just affirm that we weren't going to walk away from each other. We weren't going to break away from each other, that we were going to commit ourselves to remain connected to each other in ways that are liberating and necessary, particularly in this moment, that we hold fast to one another in this work. And so we link up and we say, I am a link in this chain.
I am a link
in this chain.
Won't break here.
And it won't break here.
It won't break here.
We are links in this chain.
We
are links in this chain.
And we won't break here.
And we
won't break here.
We are links in this chain.
We are links
in this chain.
We won't break here.
And we won't break here.
Ashe.
Everybody, thank you again. Appreciate you brothers here on the panel. Appreciate my fellow Black Man Lab folk. Thank you for being here. And we're going to keep pushing, man. Next week, we'll have another powerful discussion. So thank y'all. We love you.
Peace.